welcome. Please find a seat. We've got a great program planned for you today. So for anyone who hasn't had the chance to meet me yet, my name is Lindsey Warden. I work for Holstein Association USA as the Executive Director of Holstein Genetic Services. And I have to say, I've really been looking forward to today's session. I was thinking it'd be a nice, relaxing Saturday morning, sitting in the crowd, listening to all the interesting questions and discussion. However, anybody that's looked at a radar this week or listened to the news knows that there's been a massive winter storm that's blanketed about half the country. And I had other plans for my Saturday morning. Originally, you might have seen that past Holstein President Boyd Schaufelberger was supposed to be up here moderating this today. However, unfortunately, the weather kept him grounded, and yesterday afternoon I was asked to fill in. So I'm going to do my best to fill his big shoes. Lucky for me, he had done a lot of work to prepare for this, and he shared that with me. And I've been talking with the committee, so I hope I can do it justice, and I'll be doing my best. So before we get started, we just wanted to spend a couple minutes just talking about what brings us here today. Why are we here? So some of you might know this, some might not, but this event has been over 2 years in the making, actually. The committee was originally planning to have this event as part of the 2020 National Holstein Convention that was going to take place here in Pennsylvania, which was unfortunately canceled due to the pandemic. Then they persevered and pushed forward and were going to have it as part of the 2021 National Convention, but unfortunately due to constraints at the hotel, that wasn't able to happen either. There was discussion on canceling the meeting and just scrapping all the plans, but they'd gotten so much good feedback from people that were interested in this topic that they really felt that it was important to bring this event to life, and that's what brings us here today. They've been determined to make this event happen. Today's our platform, and we hope that you all really enjoy it. So speaking of this dedicated committee, I just want to take a minute to introduce them now. You should see them up on the screen. If any of these folks are here in the audience today, please give a wave or stand for a minute when I name you off. So I'll read from left to right. We have Ed Smith from Illinois, Ken Umble from Pennsylvania, Dick Witter from Pennsylvania, Richard Mellinger from Pennsylvania, Dean Jackson, Reed Hoover, and John Burkett. We thank them for all their efforts to make today happen. We'd also like to just take a second to thank all of our sponsors for their support of this event, and you can see them up on the screen now. Several Pennsylvania County Holstein associations have come on as sponsors, including Blair County, Chester County, Center and Clinton counties, Lackawanna and Wyoming counties, Lancaster County, Lebanon County, as well as Holstein Association USA and the Pennsylvania Holstein Association. In addition to that, a number of businesses have provided their support, including AAA, Burket Falls Holsteins, Kathy Bewley Design, Farmshine, Dieter Craig, Noble Solutions, Richard Mellinger, Randy Blodgett Communications, Stollhaven, Triple Hill Sires, and Witter Incorporated. So thanks to all these organizations for their support. So we've got a good length session today, about 2.5 hours penciled in for this, and so we wanted to give it some structure, so I'll just walk through that quickly. I'm going to divide our discussion into roughly 15-minute segments, moving through different topics. So we're going to try and make sure we cover a wide variety of things, and we'll move through those in an organized fashion. For each section, I've got some opening questions prepared that I'll pose to our panelists, but we really highly encourage questions from the audience as well. Audience participation will be key in helping make sure that this is engaging and fulfilling for all of you in attendance, and we look forward to some lively and thought-provoking questions and discussion. If you'd like to ask a question, just please raise your hand, and we've got several committee members stationed around the room. They'll be happy to bring you a note card that you can write your question on, and that'll make its way up to the front of the room here, and I'll work in as many of those as I can throughout the course of our discussion. For my benefit, please try and write legibly. This session, as you might have just heard David Lentz, is also being live streamed on Facebook today. So again, welcome to all of you joining us online. If anyone watching online would like to ask a question, please type it in as a comment, and we will have somebody watching those as well and bringing those questions in. So our theme for today is Holstein Genetics 2022 and Beyond, A Breeder's Vision. Today is all about you, registered Holstein breeders. We've assembled a group of your fellow breeders, hailing from coast to coast, each of which has a unique perspective on breeding registered Holsteins, to join us today to share their thoughts. We really want to keep today's discussion positive, upbeat, and focused on the future. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our 5 panelists up to the stage. While these fine gentlemen are making their way up, we have a few slides of information that will show about them over here on the screen. Our first panelist is John Burkett from Burket Falls Holsteins here in Pennsylvania. John and his family milk about 110 registered Holsteins. The majority of their herd is polled, and a good percentage are also red and red carrier. Welcome, John. Our next panelist is Dean Good from Do Good Holsteins in Wisconsin. Dean and his family also milk about 100 cows at their farm in Wisconsin. Welcome, Dean. Our next panelist is Blake Hansen from Hansen Dairy in Iowa. Blake and his family milk about 150 cows at their farm in Iowa. They also have an on-farm creamery that I hear makes some good products. Our next panelist is no stranger to probably anyone in this room, Dick Witter, founder of Tourist Service Inc., as well as Witter Inc. here in Pennsylvania. Dick is certainly a veteran in our industry and founding partner of an AI company, and certainly a dear friend to many registered Holstein breeders. Welcome, Dick. And last but certainly not least, all the way from the great state of California, is Hank Van Exel of Excel's Holsteins and Jerseys. He and his family milk about 2,400 head, about 500 of which are Jerseys, the rest would be registered Holsteins. And as I mentioned, we've got folks from all across the country, and we're very pleased that unfortunately we didn't have any of them have any problems with the weather. So we've got a good full panel here today. All right, so we're just gonna get right into it here. Very good. So gentlemen, we're gonna just kind of rotate through in a different order here to keep things interesting for the audience. So John, we're gonna start with you on this question and we'll just make our way down the line. So for starters, we know that each of you has a different breeding strategy that you employ on your farms. Please tell us a little bit about how you arrived at that strategy and what you feel has been most successful for you. John, go ahead and get us started.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. In the 1960s, my father had a herd of Great Holsteins and Guernseys, and he decided based on the location of our farm, if he was going to succeed in the dairy business, he had to get to registered Holsteins. In the early 1960s, he went to Wisconsin and he bought a load of registered Holsteins. And one of the cows on that load that day dropped a calf, and the calf never grew horns. And it turned out, as fate would have it, that animal not only was polled, but was also the best cow in the herd. And in the late 60s and early 70s, her name was Princess Steinhausch. She completed 7 records over 1,100 pounds of fat, a phenomenal production cow. And it was secondary that, besides being a good cow, that she had the polled trait. And my father had enough vision to realize that polled had its place in the dairy industry, and he worked and he strived and he encouraged the family. He said, don't ever throw that trait away. Do whatever you can to propagate it. He said, someday, he said, the Holstein breed will be polled, and he said, it just might be because of this cow. So, with that in mind, our breeding focused around polled. Our goal was to breed a good cow first and a polled cow second. And over the last 60 years, that was our goal. We bred around the polled. We tried to use the best genetics out there that we could incorporate in. And today, 2/3 of all the polled Holsteins in the world trace to that cow. So that's a 60-year history in a minute and a half.
Thank you. Dean, up next.
Our breeding program started around 1980. I bought a couple of heifers and was just trying to start to figure out a plan. And I had a great love for beautiful cows. Thought I wanted to breed a herd of really nice cows and to be important. Well, 1981 we bought a farm in southern Indiana, and within a year or two, those of you that are old enough to know the 80s, land values dropped in half. We were very young. We were way over our heads. And I would say our breeding program today came about because of desperation and took a huge turn at that point. We realized that we had to have some kind of a value-added product to go with what we were doing. Just somewhere, somehow, there had to be more income come out of everyday life. And we started down the path of focusing on fat at that time. Later on, protein came along, and we've kind of stayed the course of focusing on components along the way. And always still like a good cow. We have 64 cows in the barn now. 11 of them are excellent. Excellent cows are nice, but cows that pay the bills are what's really important. And so that it's been very fortunate that along the way, sometimes I get off on a rabbit trail with my breeding ideas, and my wife will say, don't they still pay us for fat? Don't they still pay us for protein? And maybe that's enough for now. Thank you.
All right, Blake, take it away.
Is it on?
Yes.
Good. My name is Blake. My breeding philosophy has changed over the course of the years. When I was growing up, I did some showing, was around livestock all the time, and I remember those type of cows when I was growing up, how they performed, what they looked like. As you know, when I first came back to the farm to run the farm, I'm the 6th generation Hansen on the farm to farm the land and stuff. So we started up our own on-farm creamery, and when that started, that was in 2004. I continued to breed the type of cow that I enjoy working with. And then when genomics came around, I decided to try that a little bit, and then now I'm back to breeding the cows the way I want to breed them. I do the mating selections myself, and basically I really focus on cows that I want to work with. Now that we have a creamery, I kind of focus on a little bit of butter, fat, protein. Now I'm focusing on a little bit of A2 milk, or the bulls that carry that gene. So I've been kind of on a roller coaster right now, but now I'm going back to using genetics from the 60s and 70s because I really strive for longevity in the cows, because they're the more profitable cows in the future.
All right, thanks, Blake. I actually will skip over Dick and we'll go to Hank, and then we'll end up with Dick at the end.
Well, my story is a lot like these other gentlemen here. My dad started after the war. He had an opportunity to come to the United States from Holland, and he started in Alabama. After a couple years in Alabama, he went west to California, and he started a dairy in 1951. And he got cows that nobody else wanted. The creamery said he could ship milk there, but he had to buy the cows. And the cows were the three titters, the kickers, the mean ones. And for a long time, when I was little, we weren't even allowed to go out bring the cows in from pasture because they'd get us. So he wanted to be a dairyman, and that was very good perspective that I learned from what I thought was a great cowman, my dad, that when he got a chance, he was going to milk good cows. He wasn't just going to milk cows, he was going to milk the good ones. And he's kept that perspective his whole life. And as the herd grew, we became one of the first people to do GMS with ABS. And Dr. Walton came out to the farm in California, and he took a liking to my dad. And so we went and we got a chance to go to one of the first World Dairy Expos. And I came around the corner, a little snot-nosed kid, and there stood Felicia May. And I was hooked, hook, line, and sinker. My competitiveness came out, and I loved showing cows. And that's when I really became hooked on registered cattle. And then, lucky that I was, I got to meet Mr. Wes Sawyer, Diamond S Farms, and that's where our first cow came from. And from that point on, we've grown, and my dad's philosophy was always, we want good ones, and if we take care of them, they'll take care of us. And unfortunately, the bad thing about California is we've always had a very low milk price. So we've always, our cows, if they didn't milk, they were gone. And so with that, we've always strived to get a lot of nice cows that give a lot of milk. And that's kind of been our breeding philosophy and brought us to where we are today.
All right, thanks very much, Hank. Dick, a little slightly different twist for you, since you have a different background. Just tell us a little bit about how and really why you started your company, to our service.
I guess it's simple, out of desperation. But when I graduated from high school, I had been offered scholarships at 2 different ag colleges, and I thought I had gone to school enough and probably missed about a third of my senior year anyway, working on the farm. But fortunately, the first manager of NEPA, Northeastern Pennsylvania Artificial Breeding Block, was Bill Schaefer. And he was also worked very closely with our FFA advisor. And he told me if I wasn't going to accept this scholarship, he said, I will give you a job, but there will be conditions to it. So what was the condition? And he said, I basically educated myself, and you can too. So you have to promise me that every night before you go to sleep, and he said, I don't care if it's in bed, but you have to read every night. I accepted the offer, accepted the challenge, and I'll be honest with you, I can't go to sleep tonight without reading something. And I think it's something that I've learned that's probably good for all of us. There's a lot of information out here that can be digested, and a lot of ways to get it now, even with the social media, but these farm magazines and so forth. And one thing that I would suggest, if you don't read anything every week, read Dieter Craig's editorials in the Farm Shop. He's right on. Now, to fast forward a little bit, I accepted that job with NEPA. NEPA, technically, and NEPA was right in the merger at that time, and then later Sire Power was formed. When Sire Power was formed and there was management changes, the new general manager had come from Maryland, West Virginia, Bolstad. He interviewed all the employees. I was working in the distribution and working with the AI technicians and running a truck and delivering semen every week during the month. And when I was interviewed, I asked Mr. Campbell directly, I said, what is my future with this organization? And he said, oh, well, Dick, he said, we've got plans. We're going to hire 4 college graduates. I said, that'd be nice. But he said, he continued on, he said, if we hire 4, 2 of them will probably end up being long-term employees of the co-op. I made up my mind that day I was going to exit. And I continued with my plans. I was very forthright and candid with my employer, and decided that I was going to start in the semen distribution business. That was in the early days of direct herd with you farmers inseminating your own cows. ABS was instrumental in doing that. I wrote to probably every AI organization in the United States and said, this is my plan. Carnation Breeding Service was in the infancy at that point in time after buying Piper Brothers in Wisconsin. So I started as a carnation distributor. The plans were to just that, be a semen distributor. Well, as time went on and Carnation and Genetics Incorporated joined forces from the West Coast, they were taking semen from the co-ops here, Atlantic Breeders and Sire Power, and selling it in the West. So Carnation came to me and said, you're going to be an employee now. And they had some arguments why I should be, but I thought to myself, you know, I've fought for a year and a half now to get what I've got at Taurus. I'm not giving it back to my competition. And they thought they had me over the barrel. I contacted all West breeders in Washington who were had a pretty reasonable bull lineup. I thought it was maybe good for the East with some of the Carnation Frazee breeding and the strength and so forth to breed back here east on our Ivanhoes. And we started distributing semen for all West breeders and tri-state breeders. And within a short period of time, started doing business with all the individual Canadian AI companies, of course, before the formation of CMEX. But as the mergers went on in the AI business, it became evident that we had to ensure our own destiny. Taurus had started sampling a couple bulls a year early, very early, to get a stud code number and to be able to sign up AI technicians so you could get your cow registered with a breeding machine. It was our way to kind of scoot the system a little bit, but it worked. And then as these mergers progressed, we got more active in our own sire lineup and stayed true to our foundation of cow families and balanced breeding. And some of you folks recall some of the models that have been used by other AI organizations. You know, the Canadian one, balanced breeding, maximum profits. That was my idea in promoting Canadian semen here in the US. We started out basically with a motto of known by the sires we sell. And that was a spin-off of Tri-States, known by the sires we keep. If they wanted to keep them, we wanted to sell them. And that kind of worked. And then when we built the facilities, new facilities in 1982, we went to the profitable genetics model. Another big reason that we built our own facilities was to control our own sire lineup, but also to work more in the international marketplace. We were the first company in the United States to be qualified to ship semen to UK. By the time that we made our deal with ST a few years ago, we were shipping semen to 38 countries around the world. We had started our own sister companies in UK and in Kazakhstan right after the communist breakup. We had a program in all the European countries with distributors, and we worked together as a group. But all along, one of the things that I've learned, observed, and really appreciate is you guys, Holstein breeders. We were greatly privileged to have the opportunity to work with people that told it like it was, took care of their cows, knew what their good cows were, and allowed us to piggyback in breed bulls into Taurus with that program. I always felt that maternal lines were probably more important than sire lines. And I realize that's trying to swim upstream in today's world with particularly the genomics thing. But you guys really hold the seed stock to the breed. You have the maternal lines. You need to expand those maternal lines and work together, cooperate with them, and not allow the big guys, the AI companies that want to be the genetic companies to tip you over. We'll have a good program today. I think a lot to think about, a lot to digest, and it'll be great.
Thank you, Dick. So we have just a few minutes left that I'd like to spend in this section. So for this next question, gentlemen, I'd be looking for answers that are on the briefer side, and that shouldn't be too hard when I throw it out here for you. So, and John, we'll start with you. As we look ahead to the future, what traits do you think are most important for today's Holstein breeders to be focusing on?
Well, we can never forget production. Production has to be there. If we're Holstein breeders, we better figure out a way that we can get the Holstein cow to average 4.5 and 3.5 to stay competitive. I, without a doubt, think that they need to be polled. And the other portion I think that we have to keep in our mind all the time, particularly in light of there's a segment in the industry that would like to de-emphasize conformation and type. We've got to breed a sexy cow. I mean, and I say that only because it's a catchword, but if we breed a cow that produces 100,000 pounds of milk, but she isn't appealing to the eye, she isn't going to be worth a whole lot in the marketplace. The Holstein cow's been sought around the world for two reasons, and I think balance is her production and her conformation traits. So I get a little antsy when I see some formulas that come our way that they would like to take away some of the weight from conformation, but we have, as breeders, if we lose anything on our conformation or our type, we're going to regress. And I don't think any of us want to go that way.
Thanks, John. Dean, go ahead.
I would echo what John had to say. I think fat and protein is what pays the bills in our state, and we learned a long time ago that functional cows live a long time, and I think conformation, I'm not talking about a show ring cow. If you're here and that's your line, that's fine. But for us, just as what I'll call commercial farmers trying to make a living, that balanced cow that can walk, that can move, she can get up and down easily and just make lots and lots of milk with high components. High components is probably what has kept us in business. Fortunate enough to, in the month of November, we shipped over 90-pound average on 2 times a day milking, and got paid from the plant with a 4.7 fat and a 3.53 protein. And those numbers go to the bank and they pay your bills.
Blake, go ahead.
I'm going to add to the list of these two gentlemen here. Two things that I see that we need to watch out for is strength and longevity. If you have those two things with a good set of feet and legs, you're going to get your production out of your cows, and long term you're going to get your fat and protein numbers up also.
All right, thanks, Blake. We'll just go right down the line there to Hank and then Dick.
Well, we have kind of have a formula. We go with high milk, high type, high percentage fat and protein with very high feet and legs, and that gives you the tight cow as well, and a good tight cow. And the dairy strength is another very important part of our breeding. We feed a lot of our own feed, and we have the dry matter intakes is a big part of what we try to do. more of our own feed we get, the better our profit margin is. And so when you do all those things combined, then you get the kind of cow that I think you're looking for.
Thanks. Hey, Dick, you want to finish this up here?
I think the good fortunate thing that we're all in, at least you guys in this room, is Holstein breeders. The Holstein breed is very diversified. The largest breed in the world. It's the envy of the world. U.S. Holsteins are the breed that every country wants. And the diversity of it is amazing, so that each of you guys can sort your own goals, sort your own selection criteria, and you have the genetics in the Holstein breed to choose from. Now, having said that, Taurus operated an all-dairy breed program. We were very, very fortunate to have some of the top bulls, the Ayrshire Bull Trident, the Brown Swiss Bull Emery, Milking Shorthorn Bull Peerless, and you know, the later bulls like Horus and Absolute Red, and the last bull I brought in was awesome. But it's you need to sort out at home what contributes to your bottom line, and you have a lot of genetics to choose from. Whatever criteria you want to use, it's available. There's genetics available in the Holstein breed. And the one comment that I would say, after spending 50 years on the road and in hundreds of farms and working and been very fortunate to have some customers that I worked directly with over the years, three generations of dairymen on that farm. What I've observed that could get you in trouble at home, if you decide that you're going to jump the fence, and you jump the fence in your criteria or your breeding program, you're probably going to be out of business. Do what you know best to do at home. Taking care of cows, breeding right, and don't get off on some new fad and so forth. And when I mention a fad, it's not that many years ago in the AI industry that they said fat's no longer needed. The modern bull was the high protein bull and low fat. Well, it didn't take very long for you guys to recognize that was a bunch of BS. So what I'm saying is analyze your own program at home and don't get caught up in some of these whirlwind fads. Breed cows the way you want to breed them and milk cows that are profitable at home.
All right, thank you very much. And I see we've had a few more people trickle in. Just a reminder, if there's a question that you hope that I ask of this esteemed panel of folks up here, please raise your hand. Somebody will bring you a note card and they'll bring that up to me and we'll work those in as we have time. And I just wanted to call out too, I think Mr. Witter there made an excellent point about making sure that you read every day. I hope especially those of you younger people in the crowd certainly take that advice to heart, because I would agree that that's a critical thing to being a lifelong learner and always making sure you're staying on top of things. So moving right along here, I want to ask a few questions related to your mating programs and what tools you use on your operations to mate your cows. So we'll start with Dean and work our way down the line. So Dean, what are the primary tools that you use to identify which bulls that you'd like to use in your herd, and what tools do you use to make mating decisions?
At this point of our breeding program, we're driven a little bit heavier than I would really like on the genomics side, just because we've had a few animals that have genomics quite high. I still think that linears are extremely important, and I see us as a breed running towards a cliff where we're going to fall off the edge on what we've been talking about this morning of conformation and functional type. I see some of these linears that are 1.5 to 2 points negative on stature, strength, and body depth, putting the pins 1.5 high and 3/4 of a point negative on udder support. those bulls will never be used in our program because we know that functional cows live long, they breed back, and they pay the bills. So we do look at the genomic list. I still like to use a few proven bulls, but to focus on linears and then so that I can do balanced matings on the cows. We still believe that like begets like. Most of us that are here that are old enough to have children and grandchildren know that most of them look somewhat like us. And to think that we can use these, what I'm just going to call ugly bulls, and breed nice functional cows, it's not going to work. So linears and combined fat and protein are probably the main focuses that we use.
All right, thanks, Dean. Blake?
There's a few different types of tools that I use. I'm still big into the 100% registry factor. So when a salesman comes to the farm, he always asks, so what type of bulls you looking for? And I give him a criteria. 100% registry, 2 points on udder, 2 points on feet and legs, proven bull, and an A2 is a plus. And you all know that there's not very many bulls out there right now that I can choose from. So the list of 200 bulls goes down to maybe 5. So it makes the salesman not stay around very long. So those are the few things that I like to look for. Longevity, like I said before, wide rumps with plenty of strength.
All right, thanks, Blake. Hank?
Well, like I said before, we're a commercial herd that loves to show cows and milk cows, both. But so we have a kind of a diverse group of bulls when you start looking at things. We use a lot of the type bulls, but we try to mate them on dairy cows. But I think something that's lacking in some of the formulas in the genomic end of things is we're a commercial herd with registered cattle, and we're not a fancy, we just take care of our cattle. And I need cows that have a lot of strength through the front end, dairy strength, and cows that can get around and with good udders. And when you have good udders, cows walk easier and stand more comfortably and they give lots of milk. But we need, and it's actually coming out in this new genetic formula that we were talking about, net merit, that they want frailer front-ended cows and little shorter cows, and that's because of the carbon footprint and better feed efficiency. Well, I use my own eye, and that's everybody in this room. That's why you're here today, is because you are the people that have that extra knowledge about what a cow looks like. And I do believe in genomics to a certain extent, but I also believe that it doesn't. Genomics and the council wanted to cancel you out. They didn't want the people that really know their cattle to say the direction of where the breed needs to go. And I strongly feel that. And I can use an example that's kind of funny, and you guys are going to kind of hopefully get a chuckle out of it. We're kind of getting to be the postage stamp where I'm at. We are now in great country. We have some of the biggest wineries in the world. One of the biggest wineries in the world is not even half a mile from my home. And these people, they do exactly what the genomic formula is for making wine. You can't even come into their facilities. They bought some of my property, so I got a tour, and it's unbelievable how they make this wine. They use every avenue that's there for them, and this one facility is $1 billion facility. They make this wine with everything that you can possibly think of, but there's one thing that they can't do. They can't make it taste good unless they have a winemaker. And that winemaker is a guy, doesn't care about his education, doesn't care about anything. All they care about is a winemaker making their wine so people want to drink it. That's his job. And that guy gets over $1 million a year. So I look at that and I go, well, that's the money that we're not getting as breeders. And we give all the information, we have all the maternal lines, we've given all that information and everything, and our passion, we've given our passion away. And I think that's an important concept that we gotta think about, and that, when I do that, that's the fun part. We have a AI, Slex Ayers, breeds our cows, comes in, and he's also loves dairy cattle, and so his whole family, actually, they go to shows with us. So it's kind of nice that
On my eyes in seeing good cows and working with good cows was Willis Connard Sr. And fortunately, Wayne Connard is picked up from his dad. Wayne's son, Cyrus, they're doing a great job at Ridgedale Farm. And Wayne came down here, he told me that he wanted to come, and I thought, you know, that's a long trip. But I'm glad that Wayne came, and he brought another good friend, Adam Little. Now, some of you guys might wonder, how did Adam Little get so involved in the Holstein business? Fortunately, he had a good old man, Bill Little, managed a Pam Tom. I was fortunate to get the first 2 bulls in AI out of Pam Tom that went 97 points. But Adam Little, right out of high school, came to work at Ridgedale. He worked side by side with Willis Connard. And the thing is, pick a mentor, work with them, get associated, and there's a lot of them that right here in the rooms rubbing shoulders.
Thanks, Dick. It sounds like there's some kind of emergency going on, so hopefully if it's anything severe, somebody would have mentioned it by now, but just please a friendly reminder just to silence your phones if they are not already. But do let us know if that alert that keeps going off is something that we need to be worried about. So to finish up this question, John Burkett, please.
Well, as far as what we use in mating decisions, first of all, we use ourselves. You know, I milk cows every day and I enjoy it. I said it's the most rewarding thing I do in a day's time is milk cows. But the guy that milks the cows, who better knows who the kickers are, the slow milkers are, the things that no one else sees except the guy that rubs into that cow every day. So with the knowledge we know of the cow, we use that in making the next mating decision. Secondly is AAA. When I was a young lad, about 10 years old, I had the opportunity to meet Bill Weeks. And that's been a few years ago, but wow, what an impression the man left. We could speak all day about Bill Weeks and the program, but I can tell you, we adopted AAA philosophy years and years ago, and it has helped us immensely. It's like going to the doctor and getting a second opinion, and that second opinion is quite worthwhile. So that has been a huge help in our breeding program. And thirdly, something we don't do enough as breeders, because we don't have the time to do it. Go to every sale, go to a show, go visit your neighbors and see what's working there. There's no better way. I mean, sure, the reading is good, and everything you said, Dick, about reading, I strongly encourage. But when we read things in some of the literatures today, you got to read it with kind of a jaundiced eye. I encourage all of you to take every opportunity and go look, because a few times in my career, I heard of this great bull, and I wondered, should we be using him? Well, I went and I looked at daughters, I looked at families. And sometimes we used them, and sometimes I ran the other way. And thank goodness I did on a few of them, because I'm sure glad. Had I not went and looked, we would have used that particular bull, and we would have used him heavy, and it would have probably set us back. So those three things I credit to what helped us in developing the herd of cows we have.
All right, very good. Thank you, John. So Dean, we're going to go back to you. Some of you touched on this a little bit already, so we'll take that in consideration. But can you all just talk a little bit more about your sire selection? Do you use mostly genomic, mostly proven bulls, a mix of bulls? And then if we have time, name a couple bulls that you're currently using, and maybe a couple bulls that have sired your favorite young cows in your herd.
So like I mentioned earlier, we're geared heavier than I would really like to be on the genomics side. Still like those proven bulls, but being a small herd and growing totally within, we don't buy any recips or anything for our embryo program, so we grow everything, so geared pretty heavily towards the genomic bulls. We sometimes go down a little different route. I like to use some of the popular bulls, but it's hard to run with the big boys that have thousands of cows and that are using the very top of the list. And one of the people that really influenced us along the way was Lowell Lindsay from Canada. And one of the last things he told me before he retired, he said, "Young man, remember, the great bulls come out of the second tier of cattle. Rarely do you mate the top bull of the breed and the top cow of the breed and get a real winner." And so sometimes we need to run right under the radar and do something a little bit different. And a little bit different has kind of helped us market over the years, kind of by accident. And maybe because I just like to do things a little differently maybe than mainstream. But so today we're using a bull called Jalapeno from C-Max, a bull that he does have what I'll call a couple of flaws, a couple areas to watch. But I think that's where corrective mating comes in. We use overdo a bit. We are using Pursuit as a proven bull, not very well proven yet, but his daughter deviations and stuff look like he may be better yet than what he shows as of today. So those are some of the bulls we're using, as well as some of the red bulls from within our own program.
All right, thanks, Dean. Blake?
Repeat the question again, please.
Yep, so just a little bit about your sire selection, and you touched on this a little bit, Blake, already, whether you use a mix of genomic bulls, proven bulls, mostly one or the other, and then just if you want to name a couple bulls that you're currently using and or a couple bulls that maybe sired some of your favorite young cows in your herd.
So I was pretty much open-minded when this genomic thing came out. I went with the fad and tried it out for about 8 years. And as they started turning to 2-year-olds, I really didn't like what I was seeing with the strength in feet and legs. They knew how to milk, that was an advantage. But I didn't anticipate them being alive very long. So my first batch of my only batch of 34 young genomic cows, I only had one go past 5 years old. And I saw that and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So then today I'm using proven bulls from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and a little bit today to gain back my longevity and strength and better feet and legs. So some of the my favorite bulls today, I like using our, Astronaut. Some of you guys may not know those bulls. It's way before my time, but bootmakers, I'm using a lot of walkway chief mark, a few triple threats. So I'm using those type of bulls to bring back some strength and longevity. And then I'm coming back on some higher type bulls that have improved with pretty decent arcs. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Who's got the cards?
Thanks, Hank.
If they just come up,
You
because
guys
I
need
need
the list out
to.
here. We were talking about it, gets a little bit too big sometimes. Like we say, we like to be like a little diverse, and I always say if you got the right cows, just make sure you try not to get any duds in there on the bottom end on the bulls, and then we try to do the outcross matings. But bulls that we have had some calves out of, it's King Doc. King Docs worked well in our herd because we're a strength herd, and we just scored, I think we had 12 or 13 new 2-year-olds just in our last classification. We're also using quite a bit of Hancocks, and we've seen those, a couple fresh, and I'm very excited about those. Thunderstorm, Warrior, Analyst, Perfect, Hannes is another bull that we're kind of excited about, a young sire, genomic young sire. Hanford, a bull that we're using quite a bit again is Tattoo. We calved in about 10 tattoos and extraordinary udders, and we're going back and like you say, once you, the proof is in the pudding, once you get to see them. And every once in a while, when you have a bigger herd, you get to see in your own herd. And I have a good friend, Joey Rosa. We're in contact quite a bit. We have the same kind of herd in production and size, and also our desire what kind of cow we want. So we talk to each other. We're using extensively in the flushing program Delta Lambda. We have quite a few calves on the ground. I think they look very good, and we're trying to see how that goes. And they're calving in. As you say, you go and make a lot of phone calls to see how they're calving. And then Select Summerfest and Sidekicks, another bull that we're milking 15 daughters of, and I just had a daughter running in a 200 cow commercial heifer string that went 88, and he is very dominant in the mammary system, so that's another bull. And then the older bull, Renegade, Helix, Tropic, and Captivating. And then we have quite a few daughters out of Callan and Crush, and those are kind of slow maturing, but both of those, they're 102%. I kind of look at 102% relative value to my herd, and they're slow maturing now. Second calf, they're 112%. So those are bulls that I'm trying to do matings on top of, and I'm really glad that we got lucky that we used the bulls that I've done a little research, and when we used some bulls back at the commercial side, there was and we're really fortunate, and guys, we're really fortunate in genomics that these bulls were alive. And a lot of you guys are going, what? But when you do a little research, you'll realize why. And that is Shamrock, Buckham, and Observer. They are the first bulls that came out of the genomic era. You go back to 2010, 2011. And those are out of that era, and I want to do some more research on that. It's kind of difficult. But those are the bulls that held fast, have the most sires of sons. And we wouldn't have a doorman, we wouldn't have a lot of the bulls we have today without those three bulls. And those are really the only three bulls. I think they all have over 35 sons in AI, over $40,000. They kind of held their proof and kind of making the cows that we like. So those three bulls, I was shocked, to be quite honest, about it. But then I go back and I look in my herd, and the daughters that I milked out of those bulls proved out to make a point that those bulls, and without those bulls, I think we would have been in a difficult time in the breeding.
Yeah, thanks, Hank. I'm going to jump down here to John Burkett, and then we'll wrap up with Dick.
Well, over the years, without a doubt, round oak rag-up elevation has made an impact in our herd. And there's with us trying to incorporate the polled and move it forward. I mean, we use the popular bulls, AI bulls, over the years, and for the most part, we had good success with them. A bull that's very seldom mentioned today, but made a tremendous impact for us, more so from the red standpoint, was Glen Afton Enhancer. We used an enhancer as a young bull. He was a Starlight son that carried red factor, and thanks to John Carpenter at the Red and White Association, he said, you need to use that bull, and we did, and we used him heavily and did quite well. We used Black Star. Black Star was a good bull for us. Rudolph again. Today, if you come and visited our herd, half the herd is sired by Burkett Falls bulls. And I guess with the last thing I want to do up here is sound braggadocious, but if you believe in your breeding program, if you take your best cows and you've used the best bulls on them, you can use your own genetics and move forward. And I've often, every time we classify, I ask the classifier, I said, well, what are you seeing out there that you like? What should we be using? And more times than not, the classifier's comment, you need to continue to use your own bulls. And that's kind of reassuring from the breeder standpoint that maybe what we're doing isn't all wrong. But we've used the gamut of bulls across the scale, and we've had quite good luck. We've got burned on a few that we shouldn't have got burned on because they were highly recommended, and that's why I stress the point, you need to ask questions, you need to make phone calls, you need to go on tours. But Diamondback today, we use Diamondback early and often, and I really like the Diamondbacks. And when you use Diamondback with analysis and the background, I think a bull that will make most dairymen happy. Saloon's another bull. Tattoo, a lot of these bulls that were mentioned up here has worked as well in our herd. But in a 100 cow herd, it's just hard to jump on one bull and use a whole lot of them. So you've got to be selective. But all in all, the bulls that we've used in AI have been major pluses.
Thanks, John. Dick, do you want to share any comments?
Well, my only comment would be that, is this on?
Yep, you're right.
You guys see who I'm sitting with here. We're all successful breeders, successful dairymen, all a little different approach to how they do things. So there's no real right or wrong. The one thing that I kind of picked on, Hank made a comment that he had to go back and analyze what really worked for him. He had that privilege being a larger herd, but each one of you probably should be doing that. Know what works and follow through and kind of continue on the same path.
All right, thank you very much. Just a friendly reminder for everybody in the audience, if there's anything that you hope that I asked that we haven't gotten to yet, please just raise your hand and one of the gentlemen will bring you a card. All right, excellent. Yeah, just keep those coming. They'll filter up to, here to me eventually, and we will work them in as we get a chance. So we're going to move on to our next subject area, and we're going to talk a little bit about conformation, type, and classification, and things like that. So for this, we'll start down on the end with Hank and just work our way towards me. So, all right, gentlemen. So how important is the conformation of cattle in your breeding program? And Hank, you've talked quite a bit about this already, that is quite important. So how often do you classify, and how do you use that information on your farm?
We classify whenever we can. We're on the Holstein program, so we classify. We don't classify the whole herd all the time, but we do. We just scored 2 weeks ago, and we scored 450 heads. So, which I enjoy very much because again, you get the other outlook about where you're going, and it'll tell you right away if you're using the right bulls. If you sit there and you go through a group of 202-year-olds and you're scoring every one of them, and you're finding out right away if the bulls you're using are the right ones. And once you get a feel for where you are with the classifier and what the classifier thinks compared to what you're thinking, you get a pretty good feel on classification. So I think classification is one of the most important things. I think it stood the test of time through genomics of finding out which the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And I think again, as we get into this discussion later on, when you had these really high genomic type bulls or milk bulls or whatever, the true one that I think is showing, especially in the Holstein breed compared to the Jersey breed, because we score as much as we can in the Jersey breed and as well, and we have a pretty good Jersey herd, and it's much more difficult to find a good Jersey bull than it is a Holstein bull. And I know we're going to get into that topic later, but when you classify, you have different eyes, and you get your linear, and you start using your linear from 6 months previous, 6 months previous, year, 2 years. You can see where your herd's going and the things you need to work on, feet and legs, age, longevity. You'll even see how your breeding program's working because you're not scoring those cows again, and you're finding out how come and why she wasn't bred or this or that. So there's a lot of good resources to classify.
Yeah, we also classify pretty much, I think it's every 7 months, we're on a complete program. I enjoy visiting with classifiers. Sometimes I disagree with them. I think we all can be on the same page on that. Because us farmers, we actually work with these cows every day. And these classifiers come in and just look at their conformation and stuff like that. So when I get a classifier to come in and I disagree with them, say he scores an 85.2-year-old, and I'm like, she's not worth 85 points. I work with her every day, her udder quality is not good. I say, can you please lower her? They don't do it. And even though I'm being Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Honest, I'm not saying she's gonna be 88 points, but I just want that cow to be as accurate because that goes on the bull proof. And I think that's what every breeder out here that wants to know and wants to see how accurate the information is. So it's a good tool. I enjoy it, and I enjoy visiting with them and seeing what their thoughts are and what type of bulls I should be using on my cows. But once again, it ultimately comes down to us dairy farmers and what kind of cows we're going to work with.
All right, thanks, Dean.
I would echo Blake on the importance of accurate information. Early on in our breeding career, we figured out real quick that we didn't always agree with the classifier. When I came to understand that that was a good thing, I think that really enhanced our breeding program. I think we as breeders, sometimes we get what I call stable blindness. We see that cow every day. We like them for some reason, and they really aren't a profitable kind of a cow or the kind of cow we should be breeding from. And so we classify probably 2 to 3 times a year. Rarely classify the whole herd anymore, but often have a group of 2-year-olds that we need to get scored, just to get a score on a couple of specific individuals, but then to see how they rank within the classification program from Holstein, helps give credibility to breeders around the world that are looking for genetics.
Yeah, thanks, John.
As a breeder, I think the most difficult thing that we breed for is conformation. And the reason I say that, you get a good young 86 or 87.2-year-old and you want to at least maintain that or improve it. That's a pretty tall order. And I also think part of the reason that the industry wants to push conformation traits to the side is it is just that. It is the most difficult trait to breed for. We can breed for production, we can breed for butterfat, we can breed for protein, DPR, and those things, but as far as functional conformation, I'm convinced that's still the tallest order. And I continue to challenge when I hear, well, the commercial dairymen, they're not interested in type or conformation. I can prove that wrong. Just down the road here, a few miles, is New Holland. And I challenged all those people that make the decisions that, hey, we've got enough emphasis on type and conformation. Let's put some more energy or emphasis on feed efficiency or anything else that they might throw at the wall. Go to New Holland sales stables someday, they sell 1,000 head of heifers. Which heifers bring the most money? The correct heifers, the big, the strong, the square heifers? Who's buying those heifers? 99% of them, folks, is purchased by the commercial dairymen of the world.
Amen.
Tell me conformation and type isn't important to commercial dairymen. We're all commercial dairymen in a way. They don't have papers for the most part. They don't have 6 and 10 and 12 generations of pedigree. They've got type and conformation, and they'll outsell the rest of them. So I struggle all the time to convince our industry, and I had 7 good years on the Holstein board, and Lindsay can vouch for this. I mean, we are challenged at times that we've got to keep type and conformation in the forefront. Because as I said in my opening comments, The U.S. Holstein cow is the envy of the world because, not only because she can outproduce anything else, but she's also the most appealing to the eye. And when you milk cows every day, it don't cost you any more to milk a good one than a swing bag or an ugly one. So I'm all for the eye-appealing, good-looking one.
All right, thanks very much, John. Dick, are there any comments you'd like to add?
Well, my only comment on this is I think everybody in this room knows how important confirmation is. The correlation between confirmation and longevity, you guys all know that. I would say, and I've been involved over 50 years in the AI business, there's been a lot of changes. If I remember back in the early days of my career, ABS was promoting utility is beauty. How long did it go before that got changed, when Dr. Walton got involved with ABS? Hank knows that story probably. What about Curtis? Curtis had the Eye of the Master program, which was very well patterned, very closely patterned to AA, and it worked because it was balanced breeding. Fast forward to the genomic era, when the AI companies wanted to get more control over the sire summaries and the bull proofs. And granted, I was there, was one of the AI guys, a little different opinion than some of my associates. But think about this a minute. The genomic evaluations are almost a pyramid system today. And there was a lot of argument about quality control, the records going in to determine genomics in the future. Holstein Association was on the block a little bit because the AI companies were doing their own linear evaluations and so forth and thought they were pretty damn important. Well, look at it today. The quality control of Holstein classification program is the envy of the world. You guys go and look at any of these top type bulls, and you'll reflect back and find out that they were also pretty good from a genomic evaluations. Think about the reverse side of it on the production end. And we're incorporating a lot of information that into these sire summaries now, but just plain pure production. A lot of these high genomic milk bulls, when they came out, are not the high milk bulls as proven bulls. But look at the type ones. Again, confirmation is important. A lot of the industry doesn't want to use the word type. They think it's a dirty word, but we all know what it is. It's what a cow looks like, what a cow is, what we can breed from, and what the future is.
All right, thank you very much. So just a reminder, I saw some hands go up in the audience earlier for cards. I just highly encourage you, if you have a question that you'd like to hear answered by these folks, please raise your hand and we will be working those in later in the meeting today. So the last question I'd like to ask as we look at confirmation as a topic here. So when you look at the way our Holstein cows look today, whether it's in your own herd, your neighbor's herds, other herds you visited, the bulls that are available, what traits are most concerned to you as a breeder today? Hank, if you'd like to get us started, we can just work our way down towards the podium.
Well, I think the two things that concern me a little bit is the thorough position, and something we're not maybe scoring as well as we should be. I know it's hard to do, but I think thorough position and leg set and also pin position are the things that I think that we need to look at and get going on. I think the mammary systems are well on their way. I'm not completely sold on some of the new formulas, and I always get a kick out of these new formulas. Like it changes your target. 1 minute you're over there, and then you're over there, and you're over there, and you might as well start skeet shooting. And because you're not sure where you're supposed to be going, but I do have definite concern on that, and dairy strength through the front end. Those are the foot and leg, dairy strength, and the thorough position I think is very important. I think we get maybe a little too straight-legged in the breed, and you get that thorough position right, and the mammary system gets to hang in there very comfortably. And we saw a lot of, I saw a lot of research, especially out of Canada, about that was very, very interesting and very true.
I'm going to add to Hank's opinion. I've seen some of these high-type animals being too tall. They don't fit in free stalls as well. They look nice, but when they don't fit in a barn that we have, it's hard to work with them. Another thing that I see is sometimes the teat positioning tends to be too close, and then of course the straight leg that Hank mentioned.
Blake's young enough to be in the crowd of my children who complain about the teat placement being too close. I'm old enough to remember running cows around the parlor twice so we could milk them, get 2 quarters on one side and 2 on the other. And I'll agree with Hank that I think the udders, we've come a long, long way as a breed. But I think in 2 generations we can destroy that if we don't pay attention to udder attachments and udder cleft. And I'll just quote some of the old breeders. Ronnie Scott became a good friend of ours. He was a classifier, and he always talked about the width of that cow from the front end to the rear. And Hank mentioned that strength, and kind of unknown to us, we kind of thought that's the way cows were supposed to look. And for years, people would come to our herd, and that would be the comment that they would make as they went away. They would talk about the strength and width of front end. And that is a concern that I have today, especially chasing the genomic rabbit. I have to watch, make sure that we don't breed that strength out of them, because I think that is probably one of the most important traits that we need to maintain as a breed if we're going to continue to be successful around the world. And I would just echo Hank's thoughts on legs, thorough placement. I think those are all very important as well. On the stature side, we have cows in our barn that are too tall. My family keeps saying you've got to breed these cows a little bit shorter. I keep saying you got to quit feeding the calves so good because you're growing them too tall. And I think we feed calves differently today than we did 40 years ago. So it's not all genetics, but I do think we need to scale these cows down a little bit, but we dare not take away from that strength and width throughout that whole cow.
Can I jump in? I forgot one important one. I think our tit size as well. Our teat size is getting too small, too short. We're getting, I went in the barn the other day. Every once in a while I go in the barn with 2-year-olds, and that's the biggest hurdle that we have is those small teats where they start squawking. And I think that's something that you're seeing a little too much.
I'll just jump back in behind Hank again. One of the things I see, and I'll just throw it out here to the younger breeders especially, we tend to breed by extremes, and we're seeing this teat length too short. Now I'm seeing people say, oh, we need that linear graph, we need those teats long. I can remember when they stepped on those teats and tore them off. So we've got to stay balanced in the middle of the breed. And just a quick story from the Angus breeders. I was a distributor in southern Indiana many years ago. And the tallest Angus bull was winning all the shows. And I'd go around, Premier Angus was at Cloverdale, Indiana at that time, and I'd go around and everybody knew who was going to win because this bull was a 1/4 inch taller than the other one. And one day I went around and people, everywhere I went, they said, they don't pay us for what's between the belly and the ground. We got to make them shorter and thicker. And an old breeder said to me, you watch. He said, we're going to make them thick. And he said, we're going to breed our calving ease right out the window because we don't know how to breed balanced. We breed by extremes. And I just throw that warning out to our breed. You young people that haven't seen those terrible udders and those long teats, yes, they're too short, but we don't need to get them too long, and we don't need the bottoms to look like a basketball.
Well, I think our breed has made tremendous progress in type over the years. When I was a youngster, I always enjoyed going I wanted to be an auctioneer. And I always went to local auction and watched them selling cattle and call cattle. And I was on the school bus at one time coming home from school, so I thought I'd practice my auctioneering skills on the school bus and was selling some classmates of mine. Well, the school bus driver pulled off and threw me off the bus for auctioneering. So I thought that's probably going to be the wrong direction in life, so I dropped my auctioneering desires. But you know, I'm old enough, I can remember going to the auction and watching them sell call cows, and I would think, who in the world could milk that cow? I mean, many of their udders you couldn't get on a wheelbarrow. Go to the auction yards today and watch them sell call cows. They'll come through there and you'll think, boy, that's a good cow. She's too good to be going to auction, but we've made that much improvement, and it's really immense. Thorough position, to me, is our big one. If you look at our progress we've made over the years on conformation, on paper, we've made less on foot and leg. And I think it's because we're measuring the wrong thing. I'm all about measuring mobility, and I suggested that to our great team at Holstein. We need to measure mobility and forget the composite of foot and leg and so forth. I'm very optimistic the day's going to come in the near future. We will measure thorough position and thorough width, and it's going to enhance the back end of our cow. The thorough controls the whole back end, as we're well aware. And when we correct that, we're going to make some real inroads, I think, in the total conformation of the Holstein cow. And I'm excited. I think that day's going to be here before long. Some of the other comments as well. I mean, I hear we've made some progress on stature. We need to make some more. We hear consistently our cows are too tall. Not too big, too tall. We're working on that. We've been working on that. And front end capacity is another one. I mean, we don't even talk about the head anymore. But an old guy by the name of Bill Weeks, he taught me you can learn about as much looking at the head as the whole rest of the cow. And boy, that is the truth. I try to apply it everywhere we can, but we made a lot of progress on conformation. There's more to be made, and I think our Holstein cow in USA is positioned to continue to be the best Holstein cow in the world.
All right, thanks very much, Dick. You want to wrap us up?
My only comment would be, and you guys have heard it a few times from up front here, the thorough position. And you really need to respect that and analyze that in your own herd. Thorough position can change a lot of things on a cow. The other thing that I've observed in a lot of herds over time is bone quality. I really feel that there's a correlation between bone quality and udder quality and actual dairiness of the cow. But walk around the front of your cows and analyze the head and the neck. And look at the muzzle. A lot of these good old cows that have been the most profitable cows in the herds have the widest muzzle, the open nostrils, and a long, clean, dairy neck. The kind of cows that you can speculate that you can really breed from.
All right, very good. So I'm going to ask a question and give you guys a minute to think about it, and you will be able to answer in whatever order you would like. I'm looking for a one-sentence answer. If you had to name a cow that you've seen in person from any period of time in your life that you would say epitomizes the real-life version of the ideal Holstein cow, who would that be? Well, these guys are thinking of an answer. We've had some folks join us. You guys in the back, if you'd like, please feel free to come take a seat. And just a reminder that we will have plenty of time for audience questions, so if you've got something nagging in your brain there, just shoot your hand up, and we've got folks in the back that'll bring you a note card to get those up here to me. So, who wants to go first?
I guess me, since I have a remote.
Go ahead, Blake.
That's a tough question. I've seen a lot of good cows. The one that I remember most when I was young, we got descendants coming from her, would be Star Dancer, Indian head Star Dancer.
Thank you.
If I was going to mention one cow, it would be Glenridge Citation Roxy.
You got a minute? Because this could take a while.
One sentence.
Yeah, I know. There's quite a few. Like I said, Felicia May got me hooked. But I guess a cow that dominated in her time more than anyone. I guess this is going to be a little hometown cooking. I think she comes from Mary's Charity. I think when she born bred here.
Brookview Charity.
Charity.
Wasn't she a Pennsylvania cow?
Well, New York cow.
Oh, New York cow. Charity.
Ohio bred.
Ohio bred, I'm sorry. I thought she was Pennsylvania bred. In her time was the most dominant cow there was.
Dean and John, any thoughts?
I'd like to mention two quick. One is a cow we don't own, and that's Apple. I mean, I come to respect Apple immensely, what she's done. The other cow is a personal cow, a Burkett Falls Elevation Sophia. I contended we could have bred her to Hereford and got a good one because she had the ability to transmit. And, you know, we flushed her to a wide gamut, and we never got a disappointment. And that, to me, is a true breeder. But the impact Apple's making around the world is almost second to none.
Very good. Dean, we're all waiting to hear your answer.
So the first thing I'd like to say is to all of the ladies here and the ladies listening on, I think what we've heard from these guys is that good mamas make good daughters. And you know, these guys have spoken of some of the great cows of the breed, and they've left good things behind. Rudolph Missy is a cow family that we've tied into a bit on the genomic side. Roxy as well. Those two cows have been a good investment in our herd. Like John, a personal cow was the cow you saw in the ad in the green grass on our slides there a while ago. A cow that we bred, she was a Southwind daughter. She was excellent, 92 4E, and that cow family, like John said, bred true, just like his cow family. We bred that family to I don't know how many different wolves. We're 10 generations into that family, and once in a while there's an oops, but there's never been a disaster that I can remember. A wide bunch of bulls that have been used through different lines of that family, and I think that's where Roxy and Rudolph Missy and these other great cows. It's one thing to breed one or two good ones from a cow, but when you have a foundation cow that breeds generation after generation after generation, those are the cows that keep you in the business.
All right, thanks very much, gentlemen. So we're going to transition, I guess, to kind of our next segment and just talk about the control of genetics today and the role that breeders play in that. So this time, Dick, we'll start with you, go to Hank, come down to John, and move our way down. So to set the stage here a little bit, I think we can all agree that dairy cattle breeding has changed pretty dramatically in the last 10 years. And we've heard from many folks that feel like we're moving towards the models of the swine and the poultry industry when it comes to breeding and ownership of genetics. In today's age, how do you all feel that we can create more opportunities for breeders when it comes to genetics? And what ideas do you have for breeders to maintain control of their genetics while still remaining competitive?
That's a big question, Lindsay. One that all of us need to be thinking about. Am I on?
Yeah, hold it closer.
I was telling Lindsay that's a big question, and all of us need to think about it. But with the tools, with the tools that are available today, it can be overwhelming. But let's look and think about what's really happened, especially after the genomics era in the industry. I'll get chastised for this, but I'm going to tell you the way I feel. I've been taught, and I've always told my Taurus associates that tell it like it is. The AI industry seen an opportunity. Instead of using genomics as a tool, the AI industry looked at it as a way to get more control. And they've taken the opportunities away from you guys as breeders of the female lines in particular. We see these companies that I now call genetic companies, what I used to refer to as AI companies, like Taurus was an AI company. I don't think we ever got to be a genetics company, but all of them today are, in my opinion, they're genetics companies. They're using their own sire lines. They're controlling females. They'll sell you semen with a lot of conditions on it. It's not right. This is America. You guys are Americans. This is still a free country. You need to step up. You need to decide what can make a difference at home. What can make a difference with you got your neighbor sitting next to you, or the neighbor down the road, or your friend across the country. Maybe it's time to start a real think tank and create opportunities. Otherwise, you'll just be buying a commodity from a genetic company, like the hog producers do, like the poultry producers do. Or maybe not even owning the dang cow, maybe milking it for one of these conglomerates. Do you want to go that route? Heck no, there ain't a soul in this room that wants to take that route. But we're headed that way, unless we do something about it. And we can do something about it. This is America. Think about it.
All right, thanks, Dick. I think we'll go to Hank next, and then we'll jump down here to John Burkett.
Well, this is something that, I already got a couple phone calls. I don't know what they put in the farm shine, but I already got a couple of phone calls from AI on something I said there, and I don't know what it was, but it was concerning to them, I guess. But I guess my big thing is, you hit it right on the head, and I right now, and I'm not, this isn't for bragging, but we were one of the highest herds in the country for milk production. We're back corrected just under 35,000 pounds of milk. I think more than half my herd, I think the herd averages 83 points. We've got a commercial setting, it's nothing fancy. So my cows are what's making me the money. But yet now, I don't have one cow. I do have one cow that I bought that is an AI, that has a son in AI. And that's, when the genomics started, I was on the board. John, you weren't quite on there yet, were you? No. So we went to battle, literally, with the council when the council was trying to be formed. And this is something I think needs to get out a little bit, because John Meyer and Chuck, your dad, Chuck Warden, took arrows. I mean, they come back and I said, do you need some ice packs for your eyes there? Did you get beat up? Because they got beat up. Because it wasn't, when I got to go talk at the World Congress in Ireland of Holstein, registered Holstein breeders. And I got to go to Ireland. And I was so excited. I had all this stuff because I was so excited about genomics. Because I thought I was going to find the outlier Holstein cow. Unbeknownst to me was the plan was not cows, not maternal, it was sire stacks. The sire stacks in genomics is what it's all about. Don't kid yourself, that's the deal. Because that covers that 31 flavors. I call it, it's the best business plan in the world. And I would really go hard at the people that were trying to sell the council and what they're doing, because it was a Fox Garden Hen House. They get to make up the rules, and oh, by the way, they get all the info. And we as an industry are giving them all of our information. Every one of us, when we test a cow, that's why DHA wanted to be part of the council, because they were having financial difficulties. So we pay them to test our cows, and then they sell the information to the council. Think about that for a minute, guys. Your information, everything that you got, all this information, when you registered, everything we do in Holstein. Holstein's an information organization. Everything we get goes to the council. And basically, they use that to make their formulas to do what they want to do. And I find it kind of comical that I've heard, and I'm just using me, but there's many other ones, I've been fortunate. I get to travel around this whole United States, and I've always got an opportunity, everywhere there's cows, even in the world, everywhere there's cows, the people that were the greatest representation of the cow and of the dairy industry usually were registered breeders. And you go talk about your people, Pencold Farms, Pennsylvania, one Secretary of Ag. You can go everywhere. Glenn Brown was in Congress in Utah. Bill Wright, Congress, Utah. They were leaders. Well, they don't want leaders. They want to be the leaders. Now they do have control. And we have the ability. I was so excited about getting an outcross, finding that cow, that one special cow. That cow that made, I had a cow that was 94 points, 53,000, 4-2 test. So I flushed it. And this was when genomics was just getting going. I'm going, my goodness, because her family was all over 4%. I'm going, Her problem was she was at Reagan Crest Dairy. So she was done. On her list, she was no longer part of the equation. I flushed her and I got 3 sons. I used the son, instead of using the genomics of the sire stack, I used the genomics of the cow, the one that most closely resembled that cow. I got 25 excellent daughters out of that bull. And that bull transmitted high butter fat and all the qualities of that cow. And I think those are things that should go into the thought process here. Our association has its own testing, milk testing. We have the classification, and we have the information. Now, to me, they're using that information, and you've got to beg, borrow, and steal to get a bull to use on a cow. And I'm not saying all the AI organizations or that, but right now they have enough money in the council. We shouldn't be having to pay for anything. They should be paying us for the information. And it kind of reminds me a little bit about horse racing. When you get horse racing, and you got to get, they don't allow AI, right? But you can't have a registered horse to run in races unless they are naturally covered. Well, that's what's happening with us, because what does that do? It keeps the value very high. And we're seeing it a little bit now. And my big question, and I think this might have been what brought up the thing, that I know that there's cattle now where they sell semen, and with that semen, when you get to use it, even Great Dairymen, they get these programs, and if they take samples of all their cattle, and they do the genomics, and there's a couple that have been very high, and they've been taken, heifers, they've been taken. And they have there's one that's 3 generations, but 2 generations, and then there's nothing. Well, they're at an unfair advantage compared to all of us, because that dairy cow, she's a negative. We all have these cows that are older cows that stood the test of time. You told me about your Southwind. That Southwind's going to be a negative cow, although she made 200-something thousand. She's done everything that the genomics want us to do in productive life, in efficiencies, DPR. But those cows are now huge negatives. But they're taking a net merit, or these high net merits, and that grand dam is 0. She starts out at 0, which is way above what a lot of these really good cows are because of the sire stack. Now think about it, let that sit in. You just got to, please think about it when you go home. So, and they're buying these for a lot of money, and it's a good business plan, because they've got these large dairies buying that semen's done, and it's in their semen tank, and they get to use some of the elite ones that we can't get until later. I'm sorry I'm a little long-winded, but this is something that's kind of passionate with me. We need that information. I've always said at that time, I wanted to sue. I shouldn't have said that, but on board, I wanted the Holstein Association to go. But we got a lot of pushback from the membership. And if you want to change this, Pennsylvania, New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, right there, those 4 states, and go to the Holstein Association convention and say this is what we want to do. And you've got the votes right there. This is just like, me in California, we only get 3 delegate votes. We want to be like the college thing that they're trying to get kicked out. We want some cows to get in our votes, but we don't get to in the political part of it. But you guys can do it. You can say that, okay, we're going to form a program that's going to get you the best. You get to formulate your own programs, and you get to do it. You get to customize your program. Because that net merit thing, I have a big problem with. If I've done everything they've told me to do in my dairy. We're one of the highest herds in the country. We've been the highest herd in the country. But we are always in one of the highest herds. And we have a type, I don't know, I think we have 700, 800 excellent cows to date. We still don't have a bull mother that's good enough to be an AI. That needs to be a question mark. And that's because we get back to that winemaker. That's what all of you guys are, is winemakers. We're the most diverse group of breeders there ever has been. And a great group. You go to Europe and you see the Swiss, they just want to be like us. And they got the best cattle in Europe. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the passion that they have. But you get these other places, you go through and you go, wow, boy, they got a long way to go. They still got a long way to go. And here we are, we got it. But we kind of sold the baby with the bathwater when we allowed the council to get the kind of control that they get. I have a question for all of you. Where would you like to have your formula be? Because right now, that formula for me, the net merit, doesn't work. And I don't think it works for most great dairymen. They feed their own feed and try to do their own thing. But they don't know, they just believe it. And I'm going to tell you, as a large dairyman, I know how this works. I have a son-in-law that does very well. He sells a lot of semen, and he goes through and he makes, he calls a guy on Monday, gets all his shot system ready. So they send all the shots. He gets it on his computer. He works it. He finds all the matings for all the off-sync shots. The next morning, it's all sitting in all these big dairies' computers. Their herdsmen pick them up. They use the semen, and he makes sure that tank stays full. And he does a tremendous job. God bless him. I don't ever have to worry about my daughter. He's taking good care of her, and he is a very intelligent young man, and I appreciate it. But then what do? Those herds, those managers, those young managers of these big dairies, that's the checkoff. The breeding program, check off. Boom, boom, and they believe what they say. We, pull hair, get rid of the bottom end, just pull hair. They don't go out and analyze them anymore. They're not the winemakers that you guys are. And I think we need to get that back into the program. And I think you can. I think the Holstein Association has plenty of money. And I know when we were over there, we were always sitting in the budget, and I don't know, we're sitting on quite a bit of money. I don't know what it is right now, John, but it's a fair amount. And I think we gotta maybe look, if you want, to get that money put into getting you value back into your Holstein cow. I'm sorry for being so long-winded. I feel like a preacher out here, sorry.
All right, we'll jump down here to John Burkett.
Well, thank you, Hank, and I can attest to what Hank says. You know, in my opinion, the AI companies ought to be at Hank's door on a monthly basis, loading bulls. I sold Hank's herd, probably the best herd of large cows I've ever seen. You could close your eyes and go into Hank's herd and pick a cow out and use the sun out of it. That's how good it is. But Hank isn't supplying the genetics that I feel that we ought to all have access to. I'm not a person of panic, but if there's any subject in our industry today that the panic button is about to be pushed, it is the direction we are going and who owns our genetics. I had the good fortune of listening to one of the most world-renowned hog experts in the world, a few years ago. And he addressed the Genetic Advancement Committee, and he just shared his experience with the hog industry. And as Holstein breeders, we compared it to where we were with Holsteins. We don't want to go that way. In the hog business today, you got the production end and you got the genetics end. There's nothing in between. The AI companies supply all the genetics, the producers do all the producing. There's a handful of breeders left to produce show hogs. I got to give Holstein and the leadership at Holstein credit because of a lot of what Hank said. If Holstein wouldn't have stepped in and fought this thing early on, we might be a whole lot closer the hog industry than we would want to be, than we want to be. We don't have many battles left in our industry that we can win. I mean, on milk marketing, disaster. Environmental issues, we're behind the 8 ball. But we still have hope to control the genetic end of things. And without the genetics and the breeding part, we wouldn't be here today. That's what brings us all together. That's what makes us, again, the most sought after breed of cattle or livestock in the world because of the Holstein and what the breeders have contributed. The clock's ticking on how long we're going to be able to supply genetics. My good friend Barry England's back there in the back, and I tell you what, Barry does a tremendous job of marketing. And Barry and I were at a meeting here not too long ago together. Barry wants his children and grandchildren to continue to be able to contribute to the genetic pool of the U.S. Holstein and the Holstein around the world. Folks, if the trend we're on continues, my kids, Barry's grandkids, your kids and grandkids, we're just going to be milking cows. Because there's not going to be a market for our genetics because AI is not going to be there wanting them. And kudos to the people like Triple Hill that you know what, they're swimming uphill. But I applaud what they're doing because maybe their philosophy is different than some of us, but they're standing alone, they're fighting. And thank God they're there. And there's some of the other industry or AI companies as well, but folks, we're at the 11th hour on saving the ability for us to market genetics and still share genetics. What would have happened if Round Oak Rag Apple Elevation and some of those those great bulls that did what they did was under lock and key and that we couldn't all use them? We've got a different breed today. So, don't want to scare anyone, but everyone needs to be aware that we're nearing the 12th hour on some things, and this is one of them. So it's a concern. And as Hank said, you people have a voice in it, and there's still hope. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Dean?
With every challenge comes opportunities. And I think that's where we're at today. I would agree with John Burkett that we're at the 11th hour. As I sat here listening today and pondering, it's been mentioned several times that U.S. Holsteins have been the envy of the world. And as I processed some of those thoughts, and I thought, how did we get here? Not at the climax that we're at now, or at the edge of the cliff, maybe as we're referring to, but how did we get to be the envy of the world? It was by working together. And I think one thing as we face these challenges that we have to remember is that we got here by the guidance of the good Lord who taught us to love our neighbors ourselves. And if we want all the profit in our pocket, we're going to self-destruct. Doesn't matter if we're the AI company or if I'm the breeder. We have to breed the kind of cattle that feed the world, that function, survive, and feed the world. There's a concern that we're going to have a huge increase in the population by 2050. Most of us up here are probably we're not going to be here in 2050. So this comes down to you, the younger generation. Where are you going to go with this? And as has been mentioned, we have paid all the expense, or not all. We've paid major portions of the expenses through DHIA testing, through classification, and we've given that stuff away. As we've given that away, people have capitalized on that, and they're in turn turning around and selling us their product with their conditions, which in reality is our product that they're selling back to us. We are at the point of becoming terminal owners of genetics, where we have the right to own the cattle only to milk them and haul manure away from behind them, and no rights to the genetic potential of those cattle. I would just like to borrow a term today that we learned through involvement with some people who have become dear friends of ours through the Alcohol Anonymous program, and they talk about being the enablers. And I'd just like to say today, we're a whole room full of enablers here. We've given away everything that we've worked hard for. And are we going to give away our genetic rights at the end? I'm not here. Those of you from the AI industry, I've rubbed shoulders with many of you. Many of you have guided me along the path. And I would say we have become successful together. But we're going to have to continue if we're going to continue to be the envy of the world in genetics. We're going to have to continue down that path that the good Lord gave us, to love our neighbor as ourselves, to let it spread out. What good does it do to be the richest man in your neighborhood when you go to your grave? But to be a benefit to our fellow men. And as I was listening to the discussion, all of the genetic trends that I can remember through my years of being a young man and listening, I remember, when they said fat was not going to be worth anything anymore, and they said we got to produce pounds and pounds of milk, and it became a fad. And then they said, oh, well, but protein's going to be worth a lot, so let's breed protein. And by the way, my wife said, don't they still pay us for fat? Maybe we should keep doing what you've always done. Then we've gotten, down the road from fat to milk to protein, and all these genetic trends have been sold to us by people basically that don't milk cows. You know what pays bills on your farm. Don't be distracted by the crowd. If you want to play in the game, you've got to run with the game, but do your own thing. As I think of these genetic trends being guided by the industry, whoops, are we part of the industry? Are we the industry? Maybe it's time for us to stand up and say, what has got us here? And first of all, we're going to say we're going to continue to love our neighbor as ourselves, and we're going to produce what has made John Burkett's farm profitable, what's made Dean Good's farm profitable, Blake's farm profitable, Hank's farm profitable, and Dick's bull stud profitable. Cows and bulls that paid the bills. If we continue, maybe we could be trendsetters. Maybe we've been silent too long. Maybe we need to step up. Maybe we need to be creative. And I think unless we become creative, we're going to be right where John Burkett said we're going to be. We're going to be with our children, and our grandchildren are going to be just hog producers, terminal genetics. We can feed them and not even own the genetic rights to them. So again, with every challenge comes opportunities. I'm not the greatest dreamer in the world for opportunities. Some of you sitting here are. If we put our heads together and we don't forget the guidance of the good Lord, we will survive.
Blake, do you have a few thoughts you want to share to close this topic up?
Yes, I don't want to continue on with what they're saying. I agree with them totally. I'm just going to make this short and sweet. At my age, I feel like I'm thinking old school. I like to go back in time where we select bulls and mate bulls from visual selection. And I want to eliminate, the sex semen aspect. I want to breed that one of one cow and think outside the box. And I want the farmer to benefit from that because they're the ones that thought of the great idea. So I'm gonna ask you guys a question, and I'm gonna pass the mic on. Where would we be today if we didn't have sex semen, IVF, or ET? Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, gentlemen, for your great thoughts on this important topic. So we have about half an hour left. Time flies when you're having fun. And we have gotten a lot of great questions from the audience. There's a lot of ground that I would like to cover yet this morning. And so I think I'm going to call this next portion of the discussion the lightning round. So we do have several questions. I would just offer for our panelists here, if there's something that I asked that you have a thought on that you want to share, please do. I don't think we'll necessarily go down the entire line. If everybody wants to talk, that's great. But if not, we can just kind of go and hopefully move through several questions here because we have gotten some good questions from the audience. And so we're going to jump right in. How concerned are you about inbreeding levels in your herds? And how do you manage inbreeding within your own program? Would anybody like to offer some comments on that?
Inbreeding is in trouble in my eyes. There's so many sires of sons out there coming from only a handful of bulls. That's why I look back to the older genes, older genetics, just to do the outcross and add some strength and longevity. And I really focus a lot on family pedigrees and try to prevent line breeding because that is going to continue to be a problem with the genomics.
All right, thanks. Would anybody else like to offer some thoughts on inbreeding? John Burkett?
I get a couple calls every year about someone that went down the crossbreeding path and they're not happy with the results. We have the most genetic diversity in the Holstein breed of any breed of livestock in the world. There's no need to crossbreed. Just do what some of these guys have done and don't be afraid to reach into the dark or reach into the past and pull something back out. It's troubling that, I don't know if it's troubling, but it drove me crazy with all the publicity that was promoted and the money spent on crossbreeding over the years. And yeah, maybe that first generation is satisfactory, but it sure backed a lot of people into the corner. Maybe as Holstein breeders, we haven't done enough promotion of the genetic diversity we have that some of these guys would go that route. But boy, it is an issue at the top. We are getting very closely bred. However, we've got lots and lots of different avenues to go.
Would anybody else like to comment on inbreeding? Dick?
I'll just share a short story with you guys on an experience I had on a farm one time. And I've been known to get my foot in my mouth. But the father that I had done business with for a lot of years had his son there with him, and they were concerned about inbreeding, thought they needed to go to a straight out cross, even considering crossbreeding. So we had a discussion, and about 20 cats were running around our feet. Kind of bothered me enough so that I said, do you guys want your cow herd to look like your cat population? And I thought, boy, I shot myself in the foot then. But a lot of these farms I went to every 8 weeks. 8 weeks later, I go there. The father approached me. He said, I am so glad that you said it that way. He said, my son has rethought this system. And you mentioned the diversity in the Holstein breed. He said, we're not going to be crossbreeding. They're not crossbreeding today.
I like that story.
Did they get rid of the cats? They get rid of the
Everybody's got some good barn cats. All right, like I said, I want to move through several topics here and incorporate some of the audience questions, so I'm going to fire the next one out. So this is open for anybody. What advice would you have for a young breeder who's maybe sitting out here in the audience or watching on Facebook, who's sitting here thinking, I really want to take my genetic program or my herd to the next level, but I'm not sure where to start? I would say keep your answers short so they can be memorable, but what advice would you offer for a young breeder who's interested in taking their breeding program to the next level, but they're not sure where to start? Dean, it looks like you've got an answer.
I don't know that I've got an answer. I've got a little bit of experience. The first advice I would give is don't spend yourself silly. Some of us have spent way too much money and ended up with nothing. But don't be afraid to reach out and diversify. I think we're in a world, and of all the negatives of embryo transfer, sex semen, and IVF, there is a positive side to that, and to you as young breeders, there is tremendous genetics available at a very affordable price. Work into it a little. I would say diversify. We, at this point, kind of by accident, have a little bit of a diversity within our small herd of cows, and we can market into several different markets. And just an example that I'll share quickly, about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I decided to kickstart our genomics program. I didn't like genomics when it came out. I didn't trust it. I will say that today on the female side, every time that we've had a litter of heifers from the same flush, it has consistently picked the best one. I don't know that I like that because I don't know that I trust genomics yet, but it works on the female side. I have less trust on the male side. Some of the great bulls that we've been told are the greatest of the breed have been disastrous. But the example I'm going to give is, there's a bull at Select Sires, Boeing Red. He's heterozygous polled. And when I went out to kickstart our program, we still were breeding from that old Southwind. We've got her and a couple other lines of our own herd. We went out and we bought some embryos. And we spent, I believe, $400 an embryo. And out of those came the mother of Boeing Red. So we don't have a huge investment in that. And there came the #1 red polled combination bull in the world for maybe a year and a half. I'm not sure. There's a few that are higher now with the combination of red and polled. So there is opportunities out there, and then through that comes marketing. But again, be careful. Don't use it as a rescue program. Use it as a building block.
That's some excellent advice. Would anybody else like to share on this topic?
One comment, think outside the box, and the bills for, like Dean was saying, are expensive. It's to IVF and flush. You can run yourself dry, so watch out and think outside the box.
The only thing I would state is if I think back on Taurus, and I think we were a pretty successful little company. The one thing that we always talked about in-house, and I called myself a cabbage head, and I had a lot of cabbage heads working with me. But as cabbage heads, we sorted a lot of things out. The one thing that always came up at Taurus was, and I'm a little reluctant to say it this way, and excuse me, Dean, but it proved true. Let's not play ball in the same court as the big guys, because we don't want to get our ass beat. And that can relate to you guys as young breeders. Do things, like Blake says, a little out of the box. Do your own thinking. Do your own planning. But I think early on in our discussion here, there was a few comments to find a mentor that can help you. And you'll be successful. a lot of different ways to do it.
I'd just like to jump back in on that mentor thing. It is unbelievable the people who have shared with us along the way, and I think that has contributed hugely to our success. And for those of you out there that are afraid to ask, get up your courage. Very, very few people will not share what they know, encourage you, give you advice. And as you collect those thoughts along the way, you surround yourself with good people, people who have made a lot of mistakes. Was it Thomas Edison that said, "I have not failed, I have only found 10,000 ways that did not work"? That's how we learn, and as we learn together, don't be afraid to ask.
Excellent advice. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll move on to our next question. So we've talked a lot today about milk production components, conformation of our cattle. Would any of you like to touch on how health and fertility traits factor into your breeding programs and the importance that you place on those?
When it comes to the health and fertility traits, I think that that's somewhere that I would say that genomics has helped us. We have a problem. We had a problem. I think we're correcting it quicker than I thought we would. It is amazing, these young cows that we have today. If we breed them correctly, they will come in and make unbelievable amounts of milk with great components, and they will breed back. I am impressed. So I think, health and fertility is important. A great big cow that gives a lot of milk that just won't breed turns out not to be so profitable.
Hank, Blake, John, anything you guys would like to add?
Yes, I think the health traits they've showed they have some heritability. The heritability and some of the other things, milk production, butterfat, and those are much more heritable. So these aren't quite as heritable as, I don't know how many in this room know the heritabilities of some of these traits, but they, like DPR, I think for every half a point, it's 2 or 3 days, or a day and a half, 2 days. So you got to keep that in perspective. But I do believe that our next big thing is going to be, our consumer has different ideas. They got rid of using BST, which is probably one of the best things that I ever did, is not use BST anymore. It did hurt the Jersey breed much more than it did the Holstein breed because of the diversity we have. So I think that's very positive, but I do believe that the off-sync programs, and I don't know how many people do that or use that, but I think that's going to be the next issue that's going to leave us. And when that does, you're going to have cattle that get bred back and that are fertile. And that's one of the reasons, again, I think that the thorough placement and rump structure is going to be so important to our cattle. And because I do believe that some of that's going to get out.
All right, very good. So we've got another question that came in from the audience that I'd like to ask. So this is talking about when you all are making mating decisions in your herd. Do you put more weight on sire stack or maternal line when you're looking at bulls? And how does that factor in with the bulls that are available today?
I look at the maternal line more so than the sire stack. The bulls that I use today are, getting pretty minimal. I'm going to have to move on to the next generations from the 70s, so they don't last forever. But if you start out with a good maternal line, chances are it's going to carry on to the next generation, is what I've seen.
If you run out of old semen, I got Dick Mellinger's phone number.
I would state from my experience in the AI industry and the selecting bulls that in reality, the sire stack is somewhat more predictable from a paper standpoint, a paper-proof standpoint. But the best bulls, best breeding bulls, I'll state it that way, maybe not the highest bulls on a proof basis, but the best breeding bulls, without exception at Taurus, have been from strong maternal cow families. And part of our success at Taurus, I think, was being able to work with breeders that knew those cow families, knew how they bred, and we always put a lot more emphasis on the cow family than we did the sire stack. The sire stack, to me, was just combining numbers. And I had a partner that some of you guys know, Paul Dan. In the early days of the predicted difference game, Paul used to say, it's almost like a great bull can't be a great bull unless his soul his sire was a great bull. And then he would relate to it. How many ball players had a great father that was a great ball player?
I'd just like to throw one quick comment in here as an encouragement to people. When I listen to this and think of great maternal lines and great sire stacks on the top side, but on the maternal side, as a people group, some of us have come from strong, well-built homes. Some of us have come from less fortunate situations. And I'd just like to go back to that beauty cow, the 92-point Southwind with all the milk and the components. 2 generations behind her, there is basically nothing. But we bred that old cow back there to a bull called Rip Valley Nyrus, and I believe that it's been a while, but there was foundation on both the top and the bottom of that bull, and it started something that has bred true for 10 generations. So if you're here this morning and you come from a situation where you just feel like there wasn't much foundation behind you, there's an opportunity for you to be the first foundation generation.
All right, very good. So we've got about 20 minutes left. I like the way this is going. We're getting through a lot of questions here. So I think the next one I'll ask, and I think Blake, we'll start with you because somebody specifically addressed this question to you, but I'll open it up to everybody as well because it's kind of a two-parter. So the first part of the question is, would you use bulls that are negative for components if you liked what you saw in the daughters? And Blake, specifically for you, you mentioned in your criteria when you're picking bulls that you want at least 2 points for type, but with the older genetics you're using, is that still your criteria? And kind of how do you reconcile and compare those older genetics to today's genetics?
That's a good question. I was thinking that was going to come up. As far as the 2 points on the udders, 2 points feet legs, that's just proven bulls within the last, 5 years, 6 years. So, but as far as older genetics go, when I first started, I had no idea how to breed these things, these bulls to these cows, because with all the rollbacks over the course of the years, everything was far left. Negative 3,000 on milk, negative 500 on fat. So I knew those numbers weren't correct. So I asked, a few other people that knew of these bulls and how I should breed them. But I had to learn on my own. So the first batch of older genetics that I chose didn't work out so well because I didn't know how to breed bulls, what their weaknesses and strengths were. So the first batch didn't go so well, but I kept going. With what my heart said. And once I saw some characteristics that I liked, I knew how to breed certain maternal lines to these bulls. And the second batch is looking a whole lot better. So in my eyes, being that all of us know what a good cow looks like, know what works on your farm, it's going to take some trial and error because genetics is extremely challenging and it takes a long time to see what you have developed. It's not an overnight thing. It takes years, and I've been doing it for 7 years, and it's been a real treat for me to wake up every day and see what I have done for myself and for the next generation that wants to take over the farm. As far as milk, fat, and protein, to be honest with you, the 2-year-olds, daughters of these older genetics, they're negative in the herd. On a day-to-day basis, they have around 4% fat, but overall, over herd mates, they're negative. But as they get older, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th lactations, then their numbers look better. And then they start producing a lot more milk, a lot more butter fat, so they get better with age.
All right, thanks, Blake. Would anybody else like to address the question? Would you use bulls that are negative for components if you liked what you saw in the daughters? Any other thoughts on that? All righty. So we've got just about 15 minutes left, and I'm about to ask a doozy that I'd like to hear from most of you on. What ideas do you have for how we can create more value in registered Holstein cattle?
And if I have the mic, I'll get started. You're talking like the value to the farmer?
Yes.
If we could, as a whole, eliminate the whole sex semen aspect, that would help us a lot, I believe. We would have, of course, less milk. And if you think about supply and demand, you get less milk, you have higher demand, and you can profit more. Less heifers in the U.S. or wherever, you know, and it would add value to the heifers as a whole, because there's not as many of them out there. So I guess that's my 2 cents there.
All right, who'd like to go next?
I guess my biggest frustration that I've had for a while is, you know, the people that's breeding the show type, they're marketing their cattle quite well, and congratulations to them. The people that's marketing the genomic end of things, they're doing a good job, and congratulations to them. My concern is the 98.5% of us that are milking good cows, milking profitable cows, and when you look at them on paper, they're just cows. But we know when we milk them every day, we've got something that we've worked generations for. Maybe it's a little bit like the milk business. We're not big enough promoters of our product. We're not good enough salesmen of our product to make it a higher demand. And I wonder sometimes if the same isn't true with that 98% of us. That we don't market them, that we don't promote them, that we don't do enough to increase the value of them. It's tough to do when milk prices are low, and it's a dilemma, and I'm not saying that I have the answer. But I do think that if there's an area that we fail as a group, and that 98% of members of Holstein Association or those breeding cows, maybe we better become better marketers of our own cattle. And maybe we ought to hire an outside marketer. Tom Brady's retired now. I don't know if he'd be interested or not, but if we could buy 60 seconds of Tom Brady on Super Bowl time to promote the 98% of registered Holsteins, you know what? I'll bet you we'd see some dollar bills flow our way. That sounds crazy, but sometimes crazy works.
I would only comment there to think back at home. In Holstein Association is a unique organization on the farm scene today, in my opinion. You guys might belong to a milk co-op, or you belong to all kinds of farm organizations, but the Holstein Association, to me, is kind of equalizer. You're a member. You you're just as important to that association, no matter the size of your herd, no matter the services that you use, the Holstein programs that you use, you're equal. But acknowledging that, what can bring the value of your membership more, or your herd more? I've thought about this a lot, and it's a challenging thing because I'm so disillusioned with the control that's taken place, the handcuffs that you guys got. We need to be coming up with some solutions. We'll talk probably a little bit more at the conclusion of this program, but maybe there's some bright minds in this room that can come up with an idea for a program that we maybe even have a separate genetic evaluation for those 98.5% of cows that John Burkett's relating to. Maybe we need to have something that's more relevant to you guys at home as Holstein breeders. You can't all chase the dang genomic game. You can't all chase the show game. So let's think about it. What can we do? What ideas you guys got? You all know your Holstein directors. You know the leadership. Start speaking up. Share your ideas. When you're at home and using your time milking cows or running the tractor, or when you're going home using your windshield time, give it some thought. But share your thoughts. You guys are pretty dang important. You're the most important asset that the Holstein Association has.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. I think John Burkett just had another.
Yeah, just to follow up on maybe slightly more serious thought than Tom Brady. But you know, the lending institutions are quite powerful in our industry and control a lot of what we do. I've contended for some time we need to go and convince the registered segment of our industry. We need to convince the lenders that registered and identified cattle are worth a premium. And convince the banker that, hey, when my client goes to a sale, allow him $300 more to buy that registered cow than that nondescript grade. We've got to convince the bankers, who unfortunately are power brokers in our industry. There are value in identification. There's value the whole way around. So lend your client that extra money, and that'll end up in our pockets. I think it's very doable. And I think we need to address that sooner than later.
Great, Hank.
And the answer to that is that we have got to breed cattle that are more profitable that will repay that $300.
Well, and I wanted to piggyback on that, John did, because I tried to bring that up on the board, and I think it's really something we got to talk to. Even further so in these formulas, because they get these, they want to see your statements, your bank statements and everything, and then your value of your cattle. And I actually have the good fortune of my old banker is no longer a banker, and he comes and he looks at my books. We look at exactly on what are your 2-year-olds doing, when should you calve them, how much should you, how much are they making, how much are they making second calf, if you calve them earlier or later, and all those things. And I ask a question again to the council. How come we don't have bankers figuring out our net merit formula? I think we need a banker on it. Everybody's laughing, but I do believe we need the guys that are figuring out the bottom line. And when they start figuring that out, they go, whoa. And they found out the hard way in California, because there used to be a lot of people in California, because of the abundance of heifers, they would go to the sales yard and they need 100 cows, they buy 3 titters, they buy, whatever, and they just milk them. Milk a lot of them, and then beef them, milk and beef. All those guys are now gone. They're all gone. And it's management that gets you where you're going to stay in survival. And that's what we got here. You get a survival. I think that's something that we ought to be pretty proud of in this group, is that you know what you got. And I think the banking industry needs to be part of that Tom Brady thing you're talking about. And I think Holstein, you know, you go everywhere, like I said, everywhere in the United States, there's Holstein members that got cows. Everywhere. And also, I hate saying it, but I was part of it, and I tried really hard under Doug Maddox's tutelage, is, yeah, we have a cow, and she's got value, but where we're making it, I heard it last night, the milk check. The milk check, the milk check, the milk check. We just think about the cows, we don't think about the real thing that's paying the bills, it's the milk. We have an association that has more clout than you got any idea of that could have something to say about it. And I know it's a thing that you come here and it's a social group, and I love the social part of it, but doggone, this group's got some power. We've got some power to make some adjustments. We've got leaders, like you got a pretty good leader right here and that knows how the political system works. We need to get a group together, and we need to get a stability in our market. Look at the difference of a gallon of milk in the store compared to what we're getting right now. It's obscene. It's just obscene. And co-ops, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of good co-ops, but co-ops, that's only a name they use. But they're not what they used to be. So we need to look at that.
All right, thanks everyone. So we're coming to the close of our program here, and I'm going to ask one more question. I would like all of you to weigh in on it. Try and keep your answers to just a couple sentences, because I really want this to be a memorable kind of take-home focus for everybody listening to this. So if there's just one thing that you would like the audience or anybody watching this to remember from today's discussion, what would that one thing be? And you all can answer, and whoever wants to go first is welcome to, but I would like to hear from everybody. What's the one or two things in just a few sentences that you'd like everybody to remember from today's conversation? There's been a tremendous amount of information shared, so what are our take-home points?
Think outside the box. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and if you have any questions or concerns or thoughts, come up and ask me. I'll give you my phone number.
Well, I think diversity. I'd say you got about a diverse group across this, but they all have one thing that every one of you should be really proud of. It's the best Holstein cow in the world, and we're all passionate about what we do, and we all have our differences of opinion, and that's what makes this cow so great. And everyone in this room, I hope, should come out of this proud that you're part of the Holstein fraternity.
That's a tough question, Lindsay, because I could go on, and we've hit a lot of topics here, and I'll be brief. I'll just recap titles. Genomic evaluations. Who pays for them? Is it not time that the council supports your DHIA program and your classification program? Look at all the war chests that they've built by collecting fees on genomic animals, and then using your information to validate it for the next generation. As I stated, I do read a lot. I can get myself confused, but there's a lot of titles, and I just picked up some things off my desk when I left yesterday morning. An article in Progressive Dairyman about farmers own their data. Think about that. Do we really own the data? We've heard some discussion about that today. Another topic that's coming up as we speak in gene editing. I think it's here. I'll bet you these genetic companies are gene editing bulls right now that you can't buy semen from, and maybe 2 or 3 generations you're not going to be able to buy semen from, and all of a sudden he's Mr. Everything. Is he really a gene edited bull? Or is he a bull that came from your female line? Something to think about. When we've started on this forum idea, We thought we wanted to get very diversified panel members. We've done remarkably well, I think. But one of the guys that we approached at the time was a Canadian, Mark Comtos, Comstar Holsteins. There's been a lot of stories about Mark. An amazing dairyman, a larger herd like Hank, a breeder herd. I think he's rallying right behind Hanover Hill now for Class Extra sires in Canada. But in talking to him, he made the comment, and I think if he was here, he would tell you, my breeding program has never changed. You see, he didn't jump the fence. And there's a lot of guys like that. There's a lot of you in this room like that. And my conclusion would be that we have to do something. We have to ensure our future. We have to be proactive. We got to take ownership. And a little quote that I read a little while ago, and I'll read it. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Can we make a new model?
Well, fortunately, the human race is a fertile race. We don't have DPR problems, and as a result, the world population is exploding. I just read the other day what the predictions were for 2030 and 2050. There's going to be a lot of people to feed. The dairy industry is going to exist around the world, no doubt about it. The question is, who's going to control it? And I really believe that the people in this room, and particularly the younger people, will have that say. And I guess in order for the dairy industry to compete like we've known it in the past, we've got to continue to supply the genetics that'll make it the industry that it has been in the past and will be. So, when you go home, whether you're young, old, or in between, the next time you breed a cow, think that you might be making the decision to breed the next great one, the next Charity, as someone mentioned, the next Apple, or whoever your favorite cow is. And I really think that when we breed cows at home, when I make a decision, I don't care what they look like on paper. I just think that I'm going to try to make the next great one on every breeding. And if you go into it with that mindset and that optimism, I think it can happen. It will position you to stay viable and solvent in the dairy industry. So I would encourage you all to just take that mindset, whatever your breeding goals, whatever it is, make sure that next breeding, that's what you're thinking. I want to breed the next great one, the next one that can grace the shavings at Madison, or the next one that can bring $1 million. And all at the same time, taking care of your family and raising a family with all the right things. So I'm thankful that I'm able to sit here with these gentlemen, and thank Lindsey for agreeing to moderate it and do a great job, and all of you for attending. I really hope that we can all benefit from it. Thank you.
All right, Dean, bring us home.
Recently, there's been some quotes in some of the major magazines that some of the major players in the AI industry are starting to have a little concern that we haven't hit the wall yet, or we haven't run over the cliff yet. I think they're seeing, as they protect their genetics, it becomes a closed house. And unless people like you and I produce genetics to go inside there, unless they can continue to produce great ones from within, they see themselves maybe getting to a crisis point. And I'd just like to share a quote today. It's been very interesting to listen to the discussion and the questions that came in today. A couple years ago, I ran across a quote, and it said, when the whole world is running towards a cliff, he who is running the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind. And the other thing I would like to share yet is what I'll call my greatest moment in cattle breeding. We sat here in this room last night and listened to a young lady talk about suicide rates in farmers. We all struggle from time to time. Some people struggle more than others. And I think all of us are here today because of a passion for the Holstein breed. You know, I have a passion within me for the Holstein cow that I have to push back from time to time. We've had the fortune, if you'll see our farm sign or any of our ads, success is not what we achieve, but enjoying God's blessings one at a time. I think if you look in the top 100 red bull list right now, there's probably 3 bulls from our farm. In August, we had the #1 proven bull that was raised and proven in Japan. Those things are not important. One night, many years ago, I was lying in my bed. Overwhelmed with the challenges of life. Somehow or other, maybe because I'm a mess, but I seem to attract messy situations. And I love people. I've enjoyed this time here. Thank you for inviting us here. But I have become overwhelmed with people. I got up, I dressed, and I walked to my barn. And I walked up and down that barn, and I stopped behind the most valuable cow we had in the barn at the time. I don't have any idea who she is to this day. I looked at the cow, I looked up at the sign, I knew the pedigree for generations. I knew she was another good one. And I just said, God, just let me work with cows. I'm tired of people, they're a mess. And if God ever spoke to me, and it was just a short sentence, I don't know yet if it was an audible voice, but it was as plain as John Burkett speaking to me today. It just said, but cows don't have souls. And in all of what we struggle with and the challenges we face, the reality of is what's important. The most important thing is not back in the barn. The most important thing is what's sitting right here in this room. God bless you all.
Yeah, thank you so much. What a way to conclude. I hope that you can all agree with what I'm about to say, but I think this has been a tremendous discussion that we've heard today. And I know that the hope is that this is only the beginning of a conversation amongst breeders. And I know that any of the gentlemen on the stage, on the planning committee, and I'm sure anybody in this room would be happy to talk further on these topics and keep the conversation going. I want to sincerely thank our panelists for being so open and sharing their thoughts with us today. Let's give them a round of applause. And of course, I also want to sincerely thank all of you who took the time to be here today, to ask questions, to listen. It's been a wonderful audience, and I thank you all so much for taking the time to share this passion that we all have, because that really is the lifeblood of the Holstein Association of Holstein Breeders, is all of you that care so much about this and take the time to be here. We really hope that you found at least a few nuggets of information that you can take home, think about, and again, keep the conversation going and put that information to work for you and hopefully help you be a more successful breeder and dairy farmer. Up next, I know we've got a luncheon coming up here in a few minutes, and our luncheon speaker will be one of your newest Holstein USA National Directors, Dean Jackson from right here in Pennsylvania. I think we're going to have a brief intermission to set up for that, but before we do, we've got Pennsylvania Holstein Executive Director David Lentz, and I think he's going to come up here to the podium and share a little bit more information with us. Thank you all so much for your attention.